I'm Kwegyirba Croffie for It's Relevant News. Welcome to Candidate Profiles. I'd like to thank Representative Bruce Morris for joining me today in the studio. Thanks for coming down.
Thank you, Kwegyirba. My pleasure, my honor to be here with you.
So let's jump right in. So what are your top three legislative priorities going in for this next term of yours?
Jobs and economic development. I think that's still important to everybody. We've had phenomenal strides already, but still important. Education, pre-K through higher ed, foundational to everything else that we're going to do for jobs for the future. And I kind of couple a little bit of property tax relief with that, because on the education piece, we end up having to talk about the educational cost sharing formula. And then lastly, senior relief.
No one's talked about senior relief.
Oh, yeah.
So let's dive into why do you want to have senior relief as one of your top priorities?
Well, you know, we've come to the toughest recession that this country's ever dealt with, certainly that the state has ever dealt with. You got a number of people that are senior citizens that they built this state. They've been the taxpayers that have paid for everyone else that use services. If we don't take care of our seniors, I think it says a lot about us, and a lot of them are in need. The population of seniors is expanding, all right? So if we don't make certain that there's an infrastructure to support them and support their needs, ultimately it's going to impact us as a state, it's going to impact just so many other different things. So you got veterans that are coming back that are senior citizens, we need to serve them. We don't need our senior citizens to become the future homeless population. I think that people who are in the workforce would be a little less reluctant, or we're going to have other challenges if they look to see what is the future. I get to retire, become a senior citizen, and what? Why am I paying taxes to the government? I may understand that I'm doing that for the children and younger kids, but when I get older, who's going to take care of me if things don't work out well?
So next is transportation, because we know that Connecticut has been rated one of the worst transportation infrastructures by the Obama administration. What would you like to see being fixed on Metro North and I-95, especially in Lower Fairfield County?
Well, being that Lower Fairfield County is the economic engine for the state, all right? And although we have an infrastructure throughout the entire state that has eroded and has not been properly taken care of, I prefer to see that we prioritize Fairfield County. Okay. Certainly, I mean, coming through Connecticut, it deals with Metro North. We are like the channel to everything happening in New England. So federally, I would like to see a greater emphasis placed upon the state of Connecticut, all of 95. Rail, I would like to see a lot more with rail, that we can actually take our trucks off of the highway and do more with rail there. I would like us to see more with ferry service, because everything can't be just strictly on the highway. We've got some great strides we've already done with the new trains that have been purchased. I think we're pretty close to getting that fleet all done. But when we take a look at what has happened with the Walk Bridge, and to allow us to come to a point where between Amtrak, Metro North, and everything else could have been shut down, you could shut down all of New England because of that one bridge. Right. I remember years ago we had the Mianus Bridge. We had major things happen. So from my perspective, number one, we fix the bridges that we have. We put them on a real maintenance schedule to make certain that we're not going back and doing this all over again. And invest heavier into rail.
So we had mentioned, or you had mentioned education, in October, I know we're at the end of October, is National Bully Prevention Month.
Yes.
Do you feel there's a role state representatives should play in reducing bullying in our school systems?
Well, we already play the role, just by the fact of the legislation that we put in place. And it's not like it's one of those laws that you put in place and you waited 5 or 10 years to review to see how well it's working. Our bullying policy happens to be one of those ones that looks like we almost look at that every year, certainly every 2 years, because within my 8 years that I've already been in the legislature, we've already tweaked that law almost 4 times. All right, so we are reviewing it. That is our role, to pay attention to what happens. We have to make certain that the laws that we have put in place have been implemented. We have a greater role to see to it that at the ground level that there's funding, because so far adequate funding really has not been put in place. All right, so we're kind of doing things in stages. I would like us to see in this legislature, pending how the budget goes, us really putting more money towards suicide prevention. I mean, we've put the adequate legislation here to do it, to mandate that this happens, but the resources still have not been brought to bear.
And another education question, we know that closing the achievement gap is a top priority for a lot of schools in Connecticut. I know Lower Fairfield County is one of those districts where the achievement gap is an issue. What do you feel are elements state law need to have to successfully close that achievement gap? So what do you feel like needs to be done to close that achievement gap?
Well, I think we're already moving in the right direction. So what needs to be done, I remember I worked with Dr. John Ramos for years. He was the first one to actually do a study on the achievement gap. First time ever. And one of the major things he took a look at was the fact that we have a number of kids who are entering kindergarten and they're not prepared for kindergarten. They come from homes where there aren't magazines sitting around. There isn't anyone reading them. So there's been a greater emphasis around universal preschool. Here in the city of Norwalk alone, this last year we were funded with 70 slots, third highest in the state. Year before that with 56 slots. And we're working harder to continue doing that. Focusing on Head Start. I'm the co-chair of the Early Childhood Council, and we're not just looking at preschool, but it's the whole picture, the health picture for the child from birth to going through that whole preschool experience. So that's number one, making certain that we have teachers that have the resources that they need to help all children, and that parents have the resources and that they know what is necessary, what their child is going to need to know, and how they can help them. That's number one. Number two, and that'll help us get more kids reading on grade level by the time they're in grade 3. The other piece is certainly, we're doing Common Core curriculum. We're working towards these things. A lot of ed reform. We're putting more money into regular public schools, but also charter schools. Quite frankly, there are some charter schools that have given us some great practices that we've moved over to the other schools, and we need to examine what works. So that's good. We've invested more money into failing schools. Okay. Really key, because you can talk about, I want a program, but if money doesn't follow it, then you're really not saying you really mean something. So we've made the proper type of investments. And then the other piece being this. I love being preventative, doing what we're doing with early childhood education, doing what we're doing in elementary. But we've got a number of people who are going to be entering the workforce. Historically, our graduation rates were not doing very well. We're doing very good now, since we're focusing our energies in the right place. But there's also the piece in higher ed. Okay. I mean, we had to go back, and quite frankly, members of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus were really fighting for this harder than ever. Our community school system was one of the best going. It really is. Great bargain to get a cheap college education and then go on to a 4-year school. However, we have about 80% of the kids who enter college still need remedial work. They still need remedial courses. And they're wasting Pell Grants and things on that. So there's a move to say, listen, we're just going to get rid of all that remedial work and have the kids kind of come in and work on these other courses. Problem was there was no real support for them. So we've gone back, and that's what we need to do. We've gone back to put those courses back in place for kids in their first year. But we're doing more, and we need to continue to do this between our secondary schools, primarily in the time a student is in junior or senior in high school, and the student being a freshman. We need to do more to align what we're doing between those two levels to make certain that more kids are actually graduating out of high school ready for college. So that's another piece. We've begun with that within the last 2 years. I would imagine that there'll be a greater focus on getting that alignment done.
Great. So last question, what excites you about representing your district? Why do you keep wanting to represent the people that you represent?
It's a real honor. It's a privilege to know that people are going to trust you to be their voice. I can't say that loud enough. The people that come to me and say, listen, this is my concern, this is what it is, and they don't feel comfortable saying it. Well, I guess I get to say it for them, and I get to vote on it for them as well. The number of people that come to you for constituent work because of agencies that they just can't get through. And my expectation would be they should be able to pick up the phone and get it done. But sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes state bureaucracy is just so large, or people don't know that, well, this isn't a state issue, this is really a city issue, or it is a federal issue. To be able to have an office where you can be that conduit to direct people towards the right resources, but most importantly, give them the outcome that they're looking for.